I've had a career in finance when I had moved from India. Then I worked in marketing and brand management in traditional CPG companies. At the core, I'm a marketer, I am a brand manager, and I cannot let go of it because marketing is such an important part of any small business. I was either assimilating and just getting to really immerse myself in the American way of life. I was participating in our culture, in Indian South Asian cultures. I was enjoying movies. I was going to different exhibits, going to the Met, looking at their Islamic galleries. But I was a little passive because taking it for granted, have enjoyed it all my life growing up in India, and now it's time to assimilate, work, earn money as an immigrant. But when I had my children was a big turning point for me. I started really immersing myself in our culture and the way it was being reflected. And
Hello and welcome to the Indian Diaspora Podcast. This is your host Rahul. Today we have a very special guest, Anu Sehgal. She's the founder of the Culture Tree, which is USA's largest cultural literacy and education training platform for South Asia. Before this, she has an extensive background in corporate America. Anu, thank you for joining us.
thank you so much, Rahul, for having me and letting me share my journey so far.
I know you're one of the many entrepreneurs from the Indian diaspora we speak with, and your mission is so special. Talk to us more about the Culture Tree.
So, the Culture Tree was formed almost 10 years ago, and the mission is twofold. One is to focus on cultural literacy on South Asia and South Asian cultures
Mhm.
and all the diversity that exists. And the second one is really to bring forth the languages from South Asia and let the diaspora enjoy those languages again and spread those languages to their children, which
Hmm.
is a very, very important skill set. Language education as it is important for the brain's development. But from heritage language standpoint, it is so critical for our kids to become more connected with their heritage culture.
Hmm. Now, I want to understand the need behind this, and I want people to empathize. We have listeners from all around the world, many
Yeah,
from India, and
yeah,
that's why I would ask. Let's begin with cultural literacy.
yeah. So
Why
the
is that? Why is that needed? Yeah.
Yeah, so the need is very urgent, I have to say,
Mhm.
because I feel in America, and even, I live in New York City, and even in big cities, metropolitan cities, melting pots of all different cultures, I still see a problem and in which our cultures are reflected. You know, a South Asian is viewed as one person, and
Hmm.
the diversity is really not understood. The diversity not just in South Asia, which has so many different countries, but also within India. People see all these cultures and all these people as one person, whereas bringing forth the diversity, which can happen in so many different ways. It can manifest in dances, food, languages, music, what have you. There's so many things that are different, but then there are also so many things that are very similar. uh,
Hmm.
so bringing forth those nuances is very critical. And as I know, I focus on children's and family education. So that is even more important, that, right from the beginning, not just our own diaspora kids, but kids in general, families in general, should know more about South Asia and South
Hmm.
Asia.
Hmm. You made me think there, Anu. This term South Asians, I hear this more in the US, let's
Yeah.
say less so among Indians in, let's say, Dubai, or Indians in
Mhm.
perhaps Australia.
Yeah.
Perhaps they could be talking that. I'm not very sure. But South Asian tends to be a very American term. So that's one point. And second point is, are we clubbing people together, right? For example, there is something called Asia Pacific Islander. Heritage Month, right? The West has tended to club people together.
Yeah.
But the second viewpoint I bring in is a lot of second generation Indians I observe are very comfortable with the term South Asians. So that's the
Yeah.
second point. And the third point is that the diversity that just the Indian continent brings in. 28 languages, more
Mhm.
than 2,000 dialects, right? And so it's a kaleidoscope. That's my point.
Yeah.
Different viewpoints here, but
Yeah.
then cultural literacy, growing up in a new land for first generation Indians, uh, that is a need, is what I'm learning from you. Uh,
Yeah. That's an urgent need because,
yeah,
we want the kids from our diaspora to view their heritage, the land of their ancestors
yeah,
in a way that is different, and
yeah,
also educating them. Like once our kids come to know more about the land of their parents, grandparents, they will be more comfortable in their
yeah,
duality and
yeah,
confident. So that's one thing. But just going back to your question about South Asia,
yeah,
uh, that, I grew up in India and I didn't really hear about South Asia or Indian subcontinent as the area is called, um, because there are a lot of similarities in this specific region, but then there are also nuances and differences,
yeah,
right? Like even in India, there between each state, each city, there is so much nuance and so much difference that exists. But from custom standpoint, we are quite similar, no matter what religion we are from, what class, what caste we are from. There are things that unify us, and there are things that also differentiate
I
us.
love that. I
And
love.
those are the things that even people from South Asia or from Pakistan, India, we take it for granted.
Yeah,
Um, in the essence, I feel when I meet someone from Sri Lanka or Pakistan or Bangladesh, there is a unifying element. Like we can
yes,
connect with each other just by the way we talk.
yeah,
Even if you're speaking in English to each other, there are so many things that unify us.
yes,
But then the differences start arising as if the first time you and I also met,
yeah,
there was an instant unification, instant identification. But then as we started talking, we started exploring the differences,
yeah,
I would say, the beautiful differences that exist
yeah.
between us. And
Wow.
then your second point about, you know, there are people in America that identify as South Asians. I
Yeah,
think those are the ones that are more tolerant towards our differences.
yeah,
The people who are more like I'm Indian or I'm Pakistan, I would say they're a little less tolerant to the differences. That's my
yeah,
POV.
yeah,
Um, but then there is so much to learn. Like I have forgotten so many things, or I've taken so many things for granted that I'm now revisiting, reliving as an educator who is educating America about the country and the
yeah,
subcontinent.
yeah. Love that. Love the reflections here.
Yeah.
There are many points that are uniting us, but there are some beautiful differences among us
You,
that needs to
the
be
key word is beautiful.
beautiful differences that needs to be recognized, to be aware of, and
Yeah,
to be celebrated, right? For
exactly.
our diaspora kids in America here, right? Imagine going to college or that taking a trip to San Francisco or Texas, meeting an American, talking about America, right? The election fatigue or talking about Thanksgiving, but also recognizing that you could be a Texan or you could be a Massachusetts person or somebody from Seattle, right?
Yeah,
So you could be different, but you could be unique.
yeah,
Love that. Now
yeah,
we'll progress in the discussion. Anu, I want to go back to 10 years back
yeah,
to your journey. So when did you first think or realize that you got to start something about cultural literacy in
yeah,
America?
yeah. So, as you know, Rahul, I've had a career in finance. When I had moved from India, that was the first job I took was in finance. Then I got my MBA in marketing, and then I worked in marketing and brand management in traditional CPG companies.
Hmm.
So I would say my training has been all over the place. But at the core, I am a marketer. I am a brand manager, and I cannot let go of it, and I shouldn't let go of it now that I'm an entrepreneur, because marketing is such an important part of any small business. So I worked in the corporate world for almost 15 years, and then
Mhm.
after I had my children was the turning point for me. Up till that point, I was either assimilating and just getting to really immerse myself in the American way of life. Um,
Mhm.
and also, at workplace, it is different set of challenges. You're just so busy with work and fitting in, and enjoying the little cultures of each institution, each corporation that exists. So I was participating in our culture, in Indian South Asian cultures. I was enjoying movies. I was going to different exhibits, going to the Met, looking at their Islamic galleries or what have you. But I was a little passive, because taking it for granted, have enjoyed it all my life growing up in India, and now it's time to assimilate, work, earn money as an immigrant. But when I had my children was a big turning point for me. I started really immersing myself in our culture and the way it was being reflected. And I am in New York City. I was in New York City at that time. So there is enough representation of our cultures. And I'll keep using plural or singular, because there are several cultures from South Asia. So that was a point when I started seeing the way our cultures were being reflected or taught to children in general was problematic. And problematic is a very strong word, and I am intentionally using a strong word. Um, there were very same solutions to reflect our culture: henna, Bollywood dance. Same old things were being showcased for all different types of celebrations. And whether it's a celebration for Eid or Diwali or Holi, it was the same stuff being repeated ad nauseum. And the way also the Indian culture or South Asian cultures from different countries were being showcased, even in big recognized institutions, was not congenial for children. If a child is going into a museum and they cannot touch something, if they
Mhm.
cannot feel something, if the way they are being taught about a concept is not in their language, simplified, then it is a fail in my mind. So those were the issues I was facing. And the turning point really was I had gone to a museum, and there was a celebration on Holi,
Mhm.
our festival of colors, and the educators were reading a book on Diwali. So that was just like a big no no. And I was like, just don't even read a book rather than reading a book on a completely different festival, because it reinforces the casualness with which our culture was being treated, and then also it's just wrong education. Why people are going to confuse the two festivals even more. So that was really the turning point. I took it upon myself that in some way or form I will make a difference. At that time I was working at Colgate Palmolive, and I kept thinking that something has to be done. And I did give feedback to that museum, but beyond that, someone has to take it upon themselves to make a difference.
Hmm.
And I was just not finding anyone who was committed, persistent. And I was like, okay, I might as well do it myself. So
Wow.
initially I just started doing it like whenever I was going to a museum or library. Like, I was asking for things, I was giving feedback. And then I realized that it had to go beyond that, because just casual comments are not going to make a difference.
Hmm.
This was also the point when I had my second son, and they're older now, 15 and 12.
Hmm.
And I really wanted to get more some sort of cultural immersion into my kids' lives. Both I have two boys, so they were not gravitating towards dance. They were not gravitating towards Indian classical music or musical instruments. So language was the third thing that
Mm.
came to my mind. And
Mm.
you know, I just hired someone to teach my kids Hindi,
Yeah.
and that went on its own. It was like a wildfire, like
Right.
it just kept growing and growing on its own because there was such a need.
Yeah.
And then the third thing was, as a parent, with my husband having a corporate job, me having a corporate job with a lot of travel, it was just not working out.
Yeah.
That American way of life.
Yeah.
I'd reached a point when I was like, okay, I cannot do this. Let me do something more entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
were a bunch of things happening, but it was that the core was basically the responsibility of an immigrant parent
Yeah.
to have their kids connected to their heritage culture, to their languages, to
Mm.
build that sense of confidence. And, I have started using the term birthright. It is our kids' birthright
Mm.
to, to know languages, to know nuances about their heritage
Mm.
country.
Mm.
And, where they take it once they are in high school, in college, is up to them. But we, the parents, have
Mm.
a huge responsibility. And I'm using all these strong words because I want the parents to
Mm.
realize,
Mm.
it's a huge responsibility for us to connect our kids in
Yeah.
their early ages of their life to their heritage culture.
Mm.
The outcome can be so amazing. And with the way our countries, from South Asia, especially India, is going to be a superpower. It is on the trajectory. And Indians, the people, Indian American people from Indian descent, are just flourishing in all walks of life,
Mm.
all over the world, especially in America.
Mm.
So why not give that birthright and that advantage to our kids so
Mm.
that they know their languages, they know their heritage, they know all the different aspects of their country, which is not just educational, it's something to be proud about.
Mm.
And with that connection and that birthright, they can, who knows, maybe they'll go. I keep telling my own kids, if you know Hindi, who knows, when you, in 10 years, when you are ready to work, you can go to India and not only, work in your respective sectors, but fit in so seamlessly, so easily, if you know the language,
Yeah.
you know?
It's a very practical advice, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it it makes sense to be a successful global citizen for the future. You're preparing them for the future. You
exactly.
know?
And,
Mm.
I, as a parent, have always been thinking, okay, if I'm teaching my child another language, which is essential for the brain's development and also progression as we get older. Like
Mm.
language has got its own advantages in our brain's development and consistent maintenance also. Um, the first language they should know is their heritage language.
Mm.
That is just, and then they can learn Spanish, they can learn French, whichever language they want to learn, be multilingual. But if you are, the first language should always be your heritage language.
Mm. Mm.
And it is not that easy because,
Yeah.
languages from South Asia, especially Hindi, which is one of the biggest languages in the world,
Yeah.
it's not a mainstream language in America.
Yeah.
So it is not easy to teach your kids. Like I, as a parent, struggle as well.
Yeah.
But it's not mainstream. It's not present in
Yes.
schools
Yeah.
and other institutions, museums, libraries. It's not big enough.
Yeah.
So it is our responsibility to, in any way we can, introduce it to our kids. We should.
Yeah. Anu, loved your story. Very inspiring. I mean, you could be doing, a plush corporate job in Colgate Palmolive. I
Yeah,
know there was, the two parents angle, right?
yeah,
But there are a lot of people who just carry on. But then you had the courage to
yeah,
listen to that calling in your heart
yeah.
and dedicate your life towards it. A, I salute to that. And B, you shared your personal stories about your two sons. What's the name, by the way?
So the older one is Nikhil, the younger one is Vikram.
Nikhil and Vikram, shout out to you.
Yeah, exactly. They're my guinea pigs.
I love that. And you said you have three sons, right, including your
No,
husband.
I was including my husband.
That's funny. But it's so inspiring on how you're preparing them for the future, as we discussed. At this point, I want to bring more perspectives into this discussion. Let's go back to Americas of the 1850s. This is a nation of immigrants. Let's say the first Irish or the first Germans or the first Norwegians who came here. Actually, American society back then actively discouraged them to
Yeah,
retain their heritage language, actually, because they wanted to create, an idea of a nation, a new nation, right? I myself, I lived in Norway for 5 years. There's a town called Stoughton in Wisconsin, entirely Norwegian town, Norwegian heritage town.
yeah,
None of them speak Norwegian. And I spoke with the elders out there. They said, Rahul, we were not encouraged to retain the language. So they didn't pass that on to their kids when the
yeah,
first immigrants came in, right? Cut back to the latest America, right? The Chinese American diaspora, the Korean American diaspora, the Indian American diaspora. I'm seeing a very positive shift in parents talking about retaining the language, right? So think about those German Irish Americans. They don't speak German, or Gaelic, but perhaps in a new world where Asia is rising, as you said, right?
yeah.
A Chinese American person should be knowing Chinese and it would help. So, and that's one perspective. The second perspective, the movie Namesake very well shows that. You just, America is your land for an Indian American kid. And possibly they don't want to travel to India. Russell Peters is a great example in Canada. He does not know what Bharatnatyam is. He doesn't speak Hindi. You know, his dad just raised him Canadian, having bacon, Canadian bacon and, barbecue, right?
Yeah.
So to those parents and those kids, if they're wondering, hey, I'm American or I'm Canadian, why should I have that birthright of going back to my culture or my forefathers' culture, right? What would you say to them?
It's almost the most basic answer is it's almost like, when your kids are younger, you expose them to all different sports, right? Because you're like, I don't know what they will gravitate towards, what
Hmm.
their body is meant for,
Hmm.
or what will interest them. You introduce them to everything. So you have to give that buffet of different things to your kids.
Hmm.
And then they, depending on how they gravitate, um, that's just the most basic thing that you can do. The bigger thing is, I have a lot of parents, second gen parents that come to me and they're like, you know, we really, really regret not learning the language because it's so hard to learn it as an adult. And, that our parents just did not focus from that era, like 1990s, 1980s, they just, or 1970s, when the immigrants from that came from India or South Asia was so busy in establishing themselves in a very isolated world where they did not see as many of people like that looked like them, and they were working. There was no conversation in the languages, the native languages happening around their kids. So it was very hard for them. But I have a lot of those kids of those parents that say, this is such a big regret, and we don't want our kids to go through this. And they already have their kids already have a disadvantage because their parents cannot help them with the language. So we have that also happening where parents are taking it upon themselves. We have some high schoolers that have been coming to us for private classes, and they're like, our parents didn't teach us the language, and now we have all these clubs, or also college students clubs, where the language is acting like their secret language and their bond building forum, or bond building medium that the college students or high schoolers from India are able to connect with each other on. And then the third big thing that is happening is the globalization. It's like out of control right now. And we can learn not just from our visit to a specific country, but we can also learn from technology. We can Zoom with our or FaceTime with our grandparents. Um, we can learn from social media. There's just so many tools available on social media. Like I've been on TikTok, I've been doing a lot of introductory Hindi Urdu videos that
Wow.
people are gobbling up.
Yeah.
So I feel this is a different time. Um, and for the parents, the biggest thing is you do not want to have that regret.
Hmm.
That, the easiest time, like I tell everyone as a parent, um, when the kids are younger, when they are in preschool or elementary school, they're our captive audience. They do what we tell them to do. They do go to a class where we tell them to go to for a class. But once they're in middle school, that is not going to happen. They
Hmm.
have to assimilate in a different way. They don't listen. They are having their teen hormones raging. They're rebellious. So by the time your kids are done with elementary school, you have lost your kids from introducing something to them standpoint.
Hmm.
There are, like in my household also, there are other fires to fight than like get over the whole conversation. Oh, I want to introduce this thing. It's already too late from social and also age standpoint.
Hmm.
So I think there is no simple answer to that, but
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
combination of all those things. And the
Yeah.
worst thing is to have a regret
Yeah.
when there is nothing but positivity. And if you're talking about language, there is
Yeah.
nothing but from language learning standpoint,
What do you
bilingual
have to
standpoint,
lose?
there's
Yeah.
only positive stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
I love
Exactly.
that. I love that. Very powerful arguments. Very powerful.
Yeah.
Where do I also come from? In my travels or my readings, somewhere I read that Indian culture can be preachy at times. What do I mean is, hey, these are the traditions. You got to do it this way, right? And a lot of, I would say, post-Renaissance Europe, the liberated European mind, for example, which dominated a lot of Western thought, post-industrialization, they might find the baggage of traditions too much. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
for example, a girl should get married by in her early 20s
Yeah.
or have kids too soon. Have kids, right? I know a lot of my Gen Z or millennial friends, they don't want to have kids. But conventional wisdom might say, hey, have kids. You
Yeah.
you don't want to regret later on, for example, the bliss of raising a child. So I see this clash of ideas. And beyond India, any ancient civilization, be it Chinese,
Japanese.
be it Persian civilization or
Yeah.
Indian, wisdom carries on through customs.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people regret not having acted. Some of them do not. They're very sure of their choices, right? So it's a gray area, but your arguments are very powerful. Your arguments. What do you have to lose if you
There's nothing
engage?
to lose. There's only upside.
Precisely. I like that. You convince me.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. So that was a good, honest discussion. I think more interesting ideas came out of that.
Yeah.
So now that we have established on why cultural literacy and language education is needed, right? Let's move on to the culture tree.
Yeah.
For the last 10 years, could you talk about the various programs you have been running in the community? Who has been your target audiences and what has been their response like?
Yeah, so the core target audience for our cultural programs and language classes both is children 3 to 12 years of age. That is the bullseye, the main target.
Yeah.
But then, from language education standpoint, our group classes are targeted to that age group. But then, as I mentioned, college students, high school students, middle school students, they come on their own and they say, we want to learn the language. Then it becomes private or it becomes a pod, like the COVID pods. So the the institutions that I tend to work with are large institutions. They are the Department of Education. They are any big library, New York Public. So I live in New York City. So all the libraries, New York Public Library is the biggest library in this world. So they are my big client. Asia Society, the Met, all the children's museums that are existing. And then the other aspect is cultural institutions like the Seaport, Hudson Yards, where their goal is to showcase all different cultures and make that melting pot even bigger, and celebrate all the key festivals. So those are my big clients. I tend to do fewer cultural programs on my own unless and
Hmm.
until they're very specialized or
Hmm.
very customized,
Hmm.
because I'm like, our culture should be mainstream. Education about our culture should be mainstream. And how do I take it to the mainstream level? When I work with big institutions. So my marketing is very marginal in that case.
Yeah.
Their newsletters, their social media presence is hundreds of thousands, millions of people. So that takes my, projects much bigger, to much bigger scale than they could have been with me doing small events on my own. And I'm not an event based company. I want to
Okay.
distinguish that. A
All
lot
right.
of people confuse that we organize events. No,
Yeah.
we do curation and we
Okay.
do the educational aspect. And there's a big difference. I'm not looking for things to decorate or organizing furniture. No, that's not what we do. We don't even touch that. If someone wants a specific theme decoration, we hire other organizations,
Got
because
it.
already there's so much work to be done.
Got it.
And
Thank you for explaining your customers.
yeah,
Let's take one project, one successful project of the culture tree. Talk to us about that project.
yeah. So our biggest, I'll take the example of our biggest event that has become kind of the tent pole event in America is we do this holy event every year at
Hmm.
Seaport, which is in downtown Manhattan. It's
All right.
called um, Holy at Seaport, and it's grown from the first year we had it. It was 500 people from primarily from the diaspora. To this year, we had 14,000 people attend that
Did
event.
you say 14,000? Wow.
14,000, 14K.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Wow.
become the biggest holy celebration, I would say, definitely on the East Coast. I don't have data about all of America, but I could bet that it is the biggest one in America. So the reason I brought that as an example is not just because of the numbers, but also people all over US know about this event. I was at an ANA, American Advertising Association's conference, and lo and behold, they bring out a case study about social cause marketing done right, and the example was my event, which is a really big
That's really huge.
yeah, it was really huge. And I was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that they had us as an example. And we get a lot of media attention. Fox, CNBC, NDTV, everyone has been covering this organically. And it's a huge celebration. We start with um, showcasing an author. Like we make it really appropriate for Holi.
Mhm.
And that is what I say. It's culturally respectful, culturally authentic, and it's very celebratory. So we combine all the three elements. We bring in literature. This year we had Priya Krishna from New York Times as a featured author, and the kids did a cooking session with her. And then we also have around 10 small businesses that are represented, from South Asian small businesses that are represented. We give them a forum to sell their products, to sample their products, to talk about their products or services. So we create a very curated marketplace.
Mhm.
We have dance, really wholly appropriate dance. We have drummers, we have DJ, we have powder play, and this year for the art activity, I had been wanting to bring the whole element around. When we play Holi in India, we have the balloons that are filled with colored water, and we have water fights. So I was like, how do we bring that to life without having much
Yeah.
liability issues? Because liability is a huge issue in
Yeah. Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
So we created a huge mural where kids were given paintball, those paintball balls
Yeah.
that are filled with paint. And the kids threw it on the mural, and there was a whole collage, a holy collage, we called it. So, and then we had a food festival in which I literally made dosas with Joe George. The this is the Joe George who was making dosas and playing Holi with us. So really a big celebration, bringing all the different multi-sensorial elements of the culture to life,
Hmm.
and very thematic. Like the cooking segment had thandai, which is the
Yeah.
quintessential holy food. And we talked about it.
Okay.
So, even little things like that make a difference. Like
Yes.
when people are saying, "Oh, let's have henna during Holi," and I'm like, that makes no sense, because henna is not done during Holi. Like, how do you play with color if you have henna on your hands? So just educating our clients also that henna and Holi don't go together.
Right.
Um, and then working with authors, bringing in so many different elements that our diaspora can help us
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
Being very mindful about the choices we make during these celebrations.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, I like Seaport. Working with Seaport is so, like I learned so much, because they're like a marketing machine. And I know, like I bring this concept to them, they will take it to the next level. I have no doubts about it.
What is Seaport for those who are not from New York?
So Seaport is a district, a historic district in Manhattan. It's in downtown.
Yeah.
And, they host a lot of events. They have a lot of small businesses, restaurants, and a lot of historic tours that happen in that district. So they host a lot of different types of events throughout the year. Holi has become their biggest event, just because of the numbers of people. And it's not just people from South Asia or India that attend. Holi is like
I was
people
like
say
La
Diwali.
Tomatina, right? It's such a fun festival that
It's
any
such a fun
American.
festival.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So that is the way in which I take it to the next level. And
Wow.
from PR standpoint,
Yeah.
this year even the Department of Tourism supported us. They put in almost $50,000 worth of advertising on social media, and we had these standees, screens on the streets of all the 5 boroughs that had our event.
Okay.
So all these things took it to the next level from
Mm.
awareness standpoint. And we
Yeah.
had people from all over the East Coast. I had people from Florida, from the DC area,
Yeah.
from Boston that attended our event.
This is so powerful. Like I could just empathize, right?
Yeah,
Let's take Thandai. You could lecture somebody on what a Thandai or a Hina is, right?
yeah,
In a classroom,
yeah.
right? Or you could experience it. You could taste that Thandai, or you could have that Hina on your hand. And
Yeah,
on your point, Anu, the next time that kid grows up and goes to India,
yeah,
celebrates Holi, makes business connections for a globalized world,
yeah,
he or she is prepared.
yeah, yeah. Education is so powerful. It is basically, we are empowering kids and their families.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love that. And are
yeah.
you sure you're not an event management company? When 14,000.
Yeah, no, I hire event managers. I execute the cultural aspect, and it's a lot. It still
Yeah.
is.
You know,
Then just one
yeah.
clarification back to your question
Yeah.
about who is your audience.
Yes.
So one other thing, so in addition to just focusing on 3 to 12 years age group, which is also a very wide age group actually,
Hmm.
um, we have started engaging with teens in a slightly different way, because the kids that, and even my own kids that started in my program 10 years ago, are now teens.
Yeah.
And do we let them figure it out now on their own? They could figure it out, because now they could go look at some apps and read on their own. But we are also trying to get them involved. If they're coming to us and saying, "Oh, how can we still be involved?" So we are letting them volunteer.
Hmm.
And this is more New York specific. This is not national, but they can. If I'm hosting an event at a temple, a puja at a temple, they can come and help us out. So they can volunteer, and that also is very empowering because they, as it is, know a few more things about the culture or languages than average South Asian Americans.
Hmm.
And this is a way to keep them engaged and to keep that ownership and that responsibility angle going. So we have started doing it. I still don't have the bandwidth because it just comes down to bandwidth, but I
Yeah.
feel there is a need to keep them engaged,
Yeah.
even in their middle school and high school specific age
Hmm.
group. Yeah.
Good point. Thank you for sharing that. So this was, let's say, cultural literacy. Let's move to language education.
Yeah.
Which languages do you impart training in, and how do you do that?
Yeah. So we focus on 4 languages: Hindi, Urdu, Gujarati, and Punjabi.
Okay.
And the reason I've focused on those languages is I am familiar with those languages. Like I'm fluent in Hindi and Urdu, but I understand Punjabi and I can speak in Punjabi a little bit. And Gujarati is a language that was demanded. So it's all demand
Mm.
based and
Demand based.
also,
Okay.
my awareness based.
Right.
So when I had hired a teacher to teach my kids, my own kids, Hindi language,
Hmm.
um, I realized there's definitely our kids are not going to learn in the same way languages are taught in temples or in India. It
Mm.
has to be evolved. The materials have to be different. It has to be much more immersive, less focused on script,
Mm.
because script is very important. As a linguist, I really understand and say that script learning for long-term language learning, script learning is just so important.
Mm.
But the way we teach it has to be different, and especially for the younger age group. You
Mm.
have to make songs, you have to come up with simple poems, simple sentence structures, vocabulary that resonates with them. If my child is using school instead of Vidyalaya, I'm not going to stop them because they're not using Vidyalaya. Even I, growing up in India, didn't use Vidyalaya. I
Right.
used school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think being a little more lenient towards
Yeah.
certain aspects of the pureness of the language is important.
Yeah.
Other thing that happens is a lot of people use Hindi and Urdu interchangeably
Mm.
because if there is a class that is already available in Hindi language, and
Mm.
spoken Hindi and Urdu are very similar.
Mm.
Um, the difference really comes through when you are using pure Hindi or pure Urdu, the vocabulary changes.
Mm.
But I could easily communicate with Pakistani
Mm.
um, in Hindi or Urdu. And
Yeah.
literally, when I speak,
Yeah.
because I grew up in North India,
Yeah.
in UP,
Yeah.
I had no difference in the concept of Hindi versus Urdu. I
Yeah.
was interchangeably
Yeah.
using Urdu, and I get a lot of slack on on TikTok when I'm saying something and I'm saying blah blah is Hindi. People check me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
in my mind, it's all the same.
Yeah.
So I forget the question. What
No,
was
no.
your
Yeah. The question was, what languages, and the question was
Oh
your
yeah.
medium. How do you
Yeah.
do that?
So,
Yeah.
so sorry. So, as far as the teaching technique goes,
Yeah.
we have developed a very specific technique
Okay.
and curriculum
Yeah.
for our South Asian American, Indian American, Pakistani American kids
Okay.
that is aligned with the way they learn
Hmm.
in schools, in elementary and preschool. It
Okay.
is not very, memorize this, you
Hmm.
cannot use that technique for kids here.
Hmm.
And we have been trained in I myself and my teachers have been trained in a Star Talk program, which is a very specific way of teaching languages that has been developed in several universities in America. It's called Star Talk, and they focus on South Asian languages. And, I was trained at NYU and Columbia, and some of
Mhm.
my teachers were also.
Mhm.
And then we developed a very specific curriculum in which
Mhm.
focus is on conversation, but then script becomes an important part after the kids have reached a certain threshold.
Wonderful.
So, it's a very thought through curriculum
Yeah.
and a lesson plan. And the other thing is materials. Like, right, when you're teaching kids, you have to have materials. So I have been writing, just coming to my books, I have been writing books in Hindi language that will make our kids' learning process easier and also take the learning outside the classroom, which is
Mm.
very important. I keep telling my parents that, language learning is not sustainable in long run if it's just 1 hour in one classroom. It
Mm.
has to be it has to be happening at home also. And I'm providing parents those materials, those tools that they can use to take the language learning into their household on their dinner table.
Yeah.
Um, and so we have developed a lot of books.
Mm.
So we are not we you can use materials from India or from Pakistan, but it has to make sense with our kids. When you are doing basic vocabulary, words like tinda and tori are not going to resonate with our kids. They just are not going to resonate. So might as well use vocabulary that makes sense, because as it is, there is only so much we can do. So we have to be very strategic in what we are teaching our kids.
Mm.
And then really getting into the grammatical concepts, which, by the way, are the same in Hindi and Urdu language. It's the same grammatical elements that the two languages are built on.
Mm.
So being very methodical and
Mm.
almost thinking like a linguist, that, the sentence structure of subject, object, verb is a very simple sentence concept, but it
Mm.
is so powerful. As soon as you tell the kids about subject, object, verb,
Mm.
their sentences become 100% correct.
Mm.
So introducing those tools in the right way. And, so we have so many different elements that we use. But the key thing that I want to communicate here is they have been developed considering our kids
Mm.
are, Indian American kids, Pakistani American kids. Our kids are a different animal, and
Mm.
we have to create programs, curriculums,
Yeah.
lesson plans that make sense for them, and
Yeah.
not just slap, a lesson plan that has been developed in
Yeah.
Pakistan or India for a
Yeah.
kindergarten.
Yeah. Yeah. Well thought.
It is not going to work.
Yeah. 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 I love that. I love that. I love how you're bringing perspectives from not only your past,
Yeah,
your education, but also realizing the differences being South Asian American, Indian American, Pakistani
yeah,
American, but also elements from the motherland
yeah,
of different countries. Wow,
yeah.
that's powerful. Now, I want to ask an interesting question here. I want to tie preparing for the world point
Mhm.
and learning language point with this question. Let's begin with an anecdote, right? Let's take the movie Three Idiots. You know, remember the character from I think the name is Ori. He's the actor. He was this guy from who grew up in Uganda or Kenya, I'm not sure, in Africa, and he was studying with them in the movie Three Idiots. So he was caricatured, right? Number one. The second point is, a lot of in Bollywood movies, the second portrayal is of this kids who studied in the Western world, you know, who understands the culture, but still the accent is not there, or they don't understand the term. So they're slightly treated special, right? Different. I've really not seen in any Bollywood movie complete integration
Mhm.
of a character who was raised outside of India, right? So it's either caricature or exoticism, if you will, right? Now I want to hypothesize a world, right? We as elders. So if Indian American kids, they learn a language,
Yeah,
and when they go to the complexities of India, it's a kaleidoscope.
yeah.
How do you think they will be integrated in India so that they're really trusted as one of their own and not seen as outsiders? if I'm communicating my question here well.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
we truly make them seamless? Is my question.
Yeah. Have you read the book Born a Crime by Trevor Noah?
Yes, I want to. I am aware of it. I've not read it now.
Yeah. Yeah. I revisit that book every 6 months.
Mhm.
And I look at the quotes from Trevor Noah quite often because it is,
Okay.
especially for the field I'm in, it is such a, I mean, he's a chameleon.
Yeah.
Trevor Noah is a chameleon. And
Yes, he is. Yeah.
why is he a chameleon? Because he can talk like an Indian and not
Yeah.
in a very caricature
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
He can talk like Barack Obama, and you
Yes.
would be like, that was Barack Obama. So one thing that he is he's very observant.
Mm.
I have met him a couple of times,
Mm.
and he listens. He lets things sink in. He's very observant, very high EQ, I would say.
Mm.
And, that is what happens when you are listening, when you're observing, when you're curious, when you are learning, when you are watching Bollywood movies, when you are reading, um, literature from your heritage country, when you are listening to your grandparents, because grandparents are constantly telling stories, right? They have the time to tell stories. So I think that caricature world now is kind of looked down upon. Like if I am watching that Peter Sellers movie, um, you know, Peter Sellers movie, The Party, which was very caricature like, right? It's just not cool anymore.
Hmm.
So that is happening. I think f- with the way this world is globalizing, and the boundaries are just flattening. It is helping us with that. Indian kids in India are talking like us now, like Americans.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, no, that was an American child. That was not an Indian child from India. Like you just cannot tell the difference now.
I'll slightly pause here. My apologies on that point. If somebody's thinking that, right? There is
Yeah,
South Bombay and there is Bombay, right?
yeah, yeah,
South Bombay kids are constantly being made fun of, and fun of might be a strong word, but
yeah.
they don't want them to carry the South Delhi, South Bombay accent, right? So
Right.
that's one India. The
Yeah,
second India is your hardcore
yeah,
gangs of Wasseypur India.
yeah,
Hey, let's be real India, right? So
yeah,
again, preparing our diaspora kids for
yeah,
both the Indias, urban as well as I would say middle, rural India. Back to you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think out of all that, like the extremes, I personally think
Yeah.
are just fading away.
Okay.
Um, and the key thing
Got
is,
it.
it's the educated Indian. It's
Yeah.
which the educated Indian is speaking in a certain way, is curious, respectful about their culture. So I think that is the category we need to have our
I love
kids.
that. Okay.
And that's again coming back to Trevor Noah. He
Yeah.
is a global citizen.
Yeah.
I'm Indian,
Yeah.
and I'm like, he is a part of my country
Yeah.
because when he visited India, he was so respectful, he was so
Yes.
thoughtful. And that is the key thing: education, curiosity, um, observing things, reading. That is the thing that is going to remove all
I
boundaries.
love that. I love.
If we are going to a Gujarati and we are talking to them about their custom
Yeah.
and honoring their traditions,
Yeah.
they will accept us with everything that
Yeah.
they have. So I think that's the key thing. We
Oh,
have to become global citizens. We have to have our kids become global citizens,
yeah.
and its education is
Yeah.
the root to everything.
Precisely. I mean, I go back to your word cultural literacy. This is what cultural literacy is.
Yeah,
It's genuinely understanding,
yeah,
and why the Greeks would smash their plate during wedding celebrations.
Yeah.
or what is a Kurdish wedding,
Yeah.
or what is a Gujarati khaman or a thepla,
Yeah.
versus Punjabi gidda, right? So
Yeah.
it's really like, I mean, what do you have to lose? That's
No,
what I
that's
come back to, right? When you're just more empowered when you are aware and you're respectful towards it.
yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Great discussion. I know, great discussion.
Yeah. Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
so this has been the 10 years of your journey, and we discussed one very important project of Holi, and the
Yeah.
second we discussed about your languages that you
Yeah.
impart. Now, let's say if there's a demand for a new language, let's say, hey, Telugu, which is one of the fastest growing languages in America,
Yeah.
uh, should people reach out to you for Telugu? Would you be open for newer languages in the future?
Yeah, it comes down to like I get a lot of requests also for Bengali.
Yeah.
It just comes down to demand
Hmm.
because these are still niche languages, and the amount of work that goes into building curriculum, hiring a teacher, it's all comes back to finances. Like I
Yeah.
I would love to do so many different projects. By the way, I forgot to mention I have developed 4 different puppet shows that
Okay.
are just doing so well. They are in high demand all over the US. So all that, you know developing a script, developing practicing, creating puppets, it all takes time. So it's the same with languages. It comes down to funding. I would love to add more languages, and Telugu and Bengali are next on my list, but it all comes down to finances.
Got it.
Because and that's something I'm trying to figure out as well. As I'd mentioned to you, we've started our company as an LLC,
Yeah.
and the nature of my programs is such that when I'm working with libraries or schools or sometimes even museums, there are huge funding issues. So I have self-financed in a lot of ways. But this year we have formed our programs, the cultural programs, into that part of my business into a non-for-profit, a 501(c)(3).
Yeah.
So we are now going to start applying for grants, and
Yeah.
hopefully when we have grants, it warrants our company being there for a long run.
Hmm.
um, Running small businesses is very challenging,
Yeah.
as we've discussed, Rahul. And I
Yeah.
would say it is the most challenging part of my business. And as a CEO, I really have to start thinking about, okay, it has proven that our company is a leader in the marketplace. Our work is in high demand, even to the extent we cannot keep up. But how do we make it sustainable so
Hmm.
that it goes on for
Yeah.
forever,
Yeah.
essentially? So I'm trying to figure out, the LLC still exists, but we have a non-for-profit. And we would love to introduce new languages. We would
Yeah.
love to introduce um, different types of dances, performances, but everything needs money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so
Step by
how do we
yes.
address that as a core issue before we go the step further?
Understood.
What do you think?
Understood. All right. And practically, let's say if a kid wants to learn Urdu or Gujarati,
Yeah.
how do they reach out to you?
Oh,
Once
they should just go to my website and they should email us.
got it. All right.
All our classes, group classes, are on our website. It's www.theculturetree.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they can email us, they can call us, and we can either start a new class if we have enough critical mass,
Mm-hmm.
or we can do a private class. In fact, our travel to Pakistan, travel to India language immersion classes are the most popular.
Talk to me more about, yeah. What's a
Oh,
travel to India class?
so it's basically a 10 week class, or 10 classes,
All
in
right.
which we will introduce the key vocabulary and sentence structures, so that if you're traveling to India, the basics of Hindi or Urdu or Gujarati language. And in fact, we get a lot of adults also that are traveling to India, whether it's desis, non-desis, enrolling into that course.
Hmm.
So those are the ways in which you can introduce languages, or inquire about our language classes.
Love that. All
And
right.
the
Excellent.
the other aspect is also our cultural programs.
Mhm.
You can definitely go to our website, and though we specialize on cultural programs for that 3 to 12-year age group, and we work with schools and private schools, Department of Education. But call us for your private parties also. Our puppet shows are the most popular during Holi and Diwali parties. So we can create programs for that. And as I mentioned, I myself am an author. My books are actually, I've written a really beautiful book on Holi, which I'm happy to do class visits for. And, that's the one that has also been made into a puppet show. So there are different ways in which you can help us keep doing what we are doing. A lot of my parents, actually, whose kids are in our language classes, they call us for their corporate parties. So we tell people about Diwali or Holi, and we play trivia games, Bollywood games. Like, we have come up with different ways in which we are getting financial returns to keep doing what we are doing, and then B, spread our culture in different ways
Hmm.
also.
Love that. Truly the culture tree.
Exactly.
Love that, Anu. All right. With this, we'll move to the last segment of our conversation, which is fun rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
All right. Your first is the first culture shock you got in the US.
The first culture shock that I got in the US. It was when I'm not going to name names, but I was working at one of the companies, and I had gone to their headquarters, which is in Buffalo, near Buffalo, New York. And there was someone who was talking to me, and they kept calling me Italian because they thought Italy and India were the same. And I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with the geography of people? That was actually like, I was just,
Cultural literacy?
yeah, exactly. I was like, yeah, they both start with I, but they are completely different.
That's funny. All right, excellent. Your next question is the culture shock now that you get in India.
So the culture shock I do get is, I was in Japan this summer, and I feel the people in Japan are really proud of their customs, their language. There is that pride that you can feel without even speaking the same language. And I feel in India, I'm already starting to see it dwindle a little bit,
Hmm.
especially with the younger generation when they are
Okay.
becoming too westernized.
Yeah.
And that is because sometimes I
Hmm.
feel I'm more Indian,
Yeah. Yeah.
though I've lived in
I've heard that
America
before. Yeah.
like longer than I've lived in India. I'm more Indian than some Indians. So that's my culture shock.
Interesting. They say you leave the era
Yeah,
of the country with you, right? Like, take
yeah,
French, for example. People in Quebec, Canada, speak more real French than Parisians in Paris now,
yeah,
in
exactly.
France now.
Yeah,
Interesting. Hmm.
yeah.
All right. All right. Your next question. The person who really inspires you still today on, let's say, the topic of culture and cultural literacy.
Um, there are a lot of people that inspire me. I forever have been the biggest fan of Indra Nui,
Hmm.
the CEO, the
Yeah.
ex-CEO of PepsiCo. And, I tell her, like, I went to the same business school as her, Yale School of Management. And I tell her, part of my decision was based on like having Indra Nui graduate from Yale SOM, that I subliminally, maybe that was one of the reasons I went there. Um, and she has completely assimilated. When she came from India, she was still wearing saris, and we know about her journey because she is quite open about it. Then she wrote her book, My Life in Full, where she explained the whole journey. And she is an ideal example of someone who has not just assimilated, uh, but thrived in America, and I think this entire world, leading PepsiCo. That is like the penultimate, position one can be in as an immigrant. But then she has also really respectfully kept her traditions alive
Hmm.
and customs. She talks about the fact that her mother lives with her, which
Yeah.
is a very Indian thing to do, or a very Eastern thing to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So I think she definitely is one of those role models for me,
Yeah.
not just in cultural aspect, but in general, like professionally also. She's always been someone I have admired.
Yeah,
Uh,
we all do. We all do.
we
Shout
all,
out to Indra Nui.
yeah,
She is a role model.
yeah,
I love the answer. Right.
yeah.
Next, a myth about America or American culture that you would want to dispel for Indians in India.
Yeah, I think one of the myths is just Americans are just, too casual about stuff. Um, and there is no grounding, there are no customs. So I think that's like the stereotype Indians have about America, whereas I personally think America is made up of so many different cultures and religions and customs that and I think traditional Americans are also very traditional about their their customs, their what they follow. So I think there are a lot of stereotypes that are uh, considered in different parts of the world, but I think that's the stereotype that Indians have, or at least when I was growing up in India, we had about America.
Hmm, I love that. All right. Finally, you talked about finances and being a CEO. If a venture capital gives you $50 million, right? What's
Yeah.
the biggest program you would drive in the culture tree?
Um, if I get a windfall like that, I think scalability is something
Yeah.
I would completely invest in. What I am doing right now is it's not been scaled, and like from business background, from business school, that's the first thing everybody talks about: scalability. How do we make it a lean, mean machine so that the reach goes up drastically. Not just a specific region can experience what your product or your service, but the rest of the world can. And the returns are coming back in to keep making the impact bigger and wider.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the way I would go. Specific tactics are still, I think it's a very loaded question, but definitely looking into technology, having apps, working with institutions, partnerships that make um, or bring not just South. If I have that kind of money, I would not just focus on South Asia. I would widen it to other cultures as well, other Asian cultures, whatever that makes more sense. Um, so I think that's how I would do it, and definitely hire a CFO, hire
Yes.
all the people that whose work I'm doing right now and multitasking. So making it extremely scalable and
Yeah.
hiring really accomplished people to join the team and make the impact worldwide.
Yeah. Melinda Gates Foundation. Watch. Are you listening?
Exactly, exactly.
All right. Lovely. You did great in the rapid fire.
Thank
This has been very beautiful discussion. I know. The authenticity in your cause and how much you love what you do is so apparent.
Yeah.
Uh, Finally, to bring this home, Anu, if there is a message you want to give to the entire diaspora, we have listeners from Australia, Africa, Europe to US, Canada. What would you want to say to them?
So one key message for the diaspora, and again by diaspora I mean South Asians all over this world, is celebrate your culture, dispel anything that exists about your culture. Bring, like, when you are doing a Diwali celebration and Eid celebration, bring people from outside your community into those celebrations so that they appreciate your and understand your celebration, your religion, culture more. And the third thing is, take it upon yourself to introduce your culture in a better way to your kids. Whatever you are doing is not enough. If your kids are enrolled in a Bharatnatyam class, Kathak class, take it even further. So that's, and if you have not introduced them into anything, whether it is, you can introduce your child when they are younger into the culture through dance, music, language. I think those are or art also, but art is just, there's not enough available right now in terms of training. Pick one field and just go bonkers with it, go crazy with it when they are in preschool and elementary school.
Hmm.
Again, just coming back to, this is their birthright. And nobody will give them that birthright but the parents.
Powerful message. With that, we'll close our podcast. Anu, thank you for joining us. Listeners, thank you for listening. Please comment your thoughts and experiences below. Looking forward to hear from you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much,
Bye.
Rahul. Bye.